It's a Tuesday night in Columbus, Ohio, and Derek does what a lot of Americans do without thinking twice. $200 slides automatically into an index fund, same as it does on the 15th of every month. He barely notices anymore. 3,000 miles away, in Leipzig, Jana just got paid too. She's careful with money. More careful than Derek, honestly. But her extra 200 euros goes exactly where it's gone for 6 years. A savings account paying next to nothing because that's what her parents did. To her, the stock market is still where you gamble, not where you save. So here's the question that actually matters. 20 years from now, who ends up wealthier? The guy automating his way into the market, or the woman quietly stacking cash that barely keeps up with inflation? The obvious answer is Derek. The real answer is messier, and if you're trying to build wealth in Germany, that difference matters more than which country you happen to live in. Hi, I'm Justin, and I've lived in Germany for over 12 years. This channel exists because nobody tells you the real numbers before you move here, or even if you're just trying to figure out how money actually works in this country. The costs nobody puts on a postcard. If that's useful to you, stick around and hit subscribe, because we do this every week. The popular assumption, especially among Americans, is that Germans are just bad at building wealth. Low stock ownership, low home ownership, a culture that treats investing like a vice instead of a strategy. There's real data behind that. But treating one number as the whole story misses what's actually happening underneath it, because Germans aren't playing the same game Americans are, and they never were. I want to give the skeptics their due, because they're not wrong about everything. Roughly 1 in 6 Germans own stocks or stock funds directly, compared to well over half of Americans. That's real money left off the table, decades of compounding a huge share of the population never captures. Inflation has quietly eaten away at savings accounts for years, while that money just sat there. Compare average net financial wealth per person, and Germany does lag well behind the US. That's a legitimate, well-documented problem, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Here's what surprises a lot of Americans, though. When Germans do invest, the tax treatment is actually simpler than back home. Gains get hit with a flat-rate capital gains tax of 25% plus a small solidarity surcharge. Same rate no matter your income bracket, no short-term versus long-term distinction to track. On top of that, every person gets a tax-free allowance, roughly 1,000 euros a year in gains, or about 2,000 for a married couple. Completely untaxed. It's not huge, but it's real money you keep every single year just for having investments in the first place. And this is where the stock ownership headline gets misleading. Over the last 5 or 6 years, Germany has had its own quiet fintech investing boom. Apps that let you start an ETF savings plan with as little as €1 a month have opened millions of new brokerage accounts, mostly among people under 40 who grew up watching their parents earn nothing in a savings account. Providers like Trade Republic and Scalable Capital didn't exist a decade ago. Now they're some of the most downloaded finance apps in the country. There's also a piece of the puzzle most outsiders never hear about, the company pension scheme. Plenty of German employers let you divert part of your salary into a retirement plan before taxes and social contributions come out, and many add their own matching contribution on top, not unlike a 401k match in the US. It's less flashy and fewer people fully understand it, but if you're working a corporate job here and you're not enrolled, you're leaving employer money on the table exactly the same way you would back home. Then there's the factor that changes the whole equation, the statutory pension system. Most Germans are enrolled in it automatically, and it's designed to replace a meaningful chunk of your income in retirement, nowhere near full replacement, but far more of a floor than Social Security tends to provide relative to income back home. That changes behavior. When you're not staring down the barrel of funding 100% of your own retirement, the urgency to aggressively invest just isn't the same. It's not laziness. It's a rational response to a different set of guardrails. Real estate tells a similar story. Home ownership sits around 50% in Germany, well below roughly 65% in the US, largely because of upfront cost. A property transfer tax that can run 5 to 6.5% of the purchase price, plus notary fees and broker commissions adding another 8 to 10% combined. Buy a 400,000 euro apartment and you might owe 30 to 40,000 euros in closing costs before you've bought a single piece of furniture. That friction makes real estate a slower, more deliberate wealth lever here than the buy and flip playbook common in parts of the US. But here's a number that flips the narrative a little. Germans actually save a higher share of their income than Americans do, on average. somewhere around 11% of disposable income, compared to roughly 5% in the US in recent years. When healthcare doesn't bankrupt you and university doesn't require a six-figure loan, there's simply more income left over at the end of the month to save, even if it's sitting in a low-yield account instead of the market. And here's where it gets interesting. If you'd asked me 5 years ago, I'd have told you Germany's investing culture was basically frozen. It's not anymore. Younger Germans are opening brokerage accounts at a pace this country has genuinely never seen. Millions of new accounts since 2020 alone, most of them tied to automated ETF savings plans rather than picking individual stocks. The habit that kept money parked in a savings account for generations is quietly breaking, 25 euros at a time. If you're actually trying to get this set up for yourself, the hardest part usually isn't the investing. It's finding a bank that doesn't bury you in fees or paperwork built for German tax residents who already know the system inside and out. I bank with DKB myself, and it's the one I'd actually recommend for exactly this. Free account, easy ETF savings plans, no nonsense. I'll drop a link below. So back to Derek and Jana. 20 years in, Derek's index fund has very likely outpaced Jana's savings account many times over. That part of the myth holds up, but Jana isn't paying out of pocket for a health crisis. She's got a state pension quietly accumulating in the background, and if she'd opened one of those €1 ETF apps 3 years ago instead of sticking with the old savings account, she'd already be closing a meaningful chunk of that gap. The real difference was never Germany versus America. It was Jana versus a slightly different version of Jana who started 5 years earlier. So if you're living in Germany and actually want to build wealth here, do these 4 things. 1. Open a low-fee broker account and start an ETF savings plan, even if it's just 25 or 50 euros a month. Starting small beats waiting for the perfect amount. 2. File the exemption order with your bank so your tax-free allowance actually gets applied automatically instead of you overpaying and claiming it back later. 3. Ask your employer whether they offer a matching company pension scheme and enroll if they do. That's free money sitting in a form most people never bother to read. 4. Don't treat the state pension as your whole retirement plan. Treat it as the floor, not the finish line, and build on top of it. Derek and Jana aren't so different really. They just started with different defaults. The good news is defaults can change, and if you're paying attention to the real numbers instead of the assumptions, you can build wealth here just as well as anywhere else. You just have to actually do it, on purpose. That's the whole point of this channel. The costs nobody puts on a postcard, and the numbers that actually help you plan around them. If this helped, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.